The night sky erupted in a brilliant flash of emerald and violet as something tore through Earth's atmosphere, leaving a luminous trail across the heavens. Professor Marcus Ellis nearly dropped his thermos of coffee as he tracked the object through his telescope. What most would mistake for a meteor, the astronomy professor recognized as something altogether different. The object changed course twice before disappearing behind the pine-covered hills of Lake Mendota. "Impossible," he whispered, hands trembling as he scribbled coordinates in his field journal. 20 years studying celestial phenomena, and nothing had ever behaved like this. Natural objects didn't make course corrections. The October night bit with unexpected cold as Marcus packed his equipment into his weathered Jeep. The sensible thing would be to call colleagues, perhaps even authorities. Instead, he found himself driving toward the estimated impact site, heart hammering against his ribs with each turn down increasingly narrow forest roads. 2 miles in, the road ended. Marcus grabbed his backpack, headlamp, and walking stick before plunging into the underbrush. The forest floor was carpeted with fallen leaves that crunched beneath his boots, announcing his presence to whatever waited ahead. The smell of ozone and something unfamiliar, like cinnamon mixed with copper, grew stronger as he approached a small clearing. There, in a shallow crater no larger than a backyard swimming pool, lay a vessel unlike anything human engineering could produce. Its surface rippled with colors that seemed to exist somewhere between liquid and light, organic curves suggesting something grown rather than manufactured. "Hello?" Marcus called out, immediately feeling foolish. What was he expecting, that alien visitors would speak English? A sound like wind chimes answered him, followed by a series of clicks and whistles. Marcus circled the crater cautiously, his headlamp revealing more details of the craft. What he had initially taken for decorative patterns along the hull were actually fractures, with a viscous amber substance seeping through the cracks. The clicking sounds grew more urgent, drawing his attention to what appeared to be an opening in the vessel's side. There, partially obscured by debris and twisted metal, was a figure. Not human, that much was immediately clear. The being possessed 4 slender arms and a humanoid torso that transitioned into something resembling a serpentine lower body. Its skin shimmered with a pearlescent quality, changing hues with each labored breath. But most striking were its eyes, large, multifaceted organs that reflected Marcus's headlamp in dozens of tiny prisms. One of the being's appendages, a prehensile tail-like extension, was pinned beneath a section of the craft's hull. Each time it attempted to move, the being emitted that wind chime sound Marcus now recognized as an expression of pain. "You're trapped," Marcus said, slowly kneeling at a safe distance. "You're hurt." The alien's eyes rotated toward him, and Marcus felt an overwhelming sensation wash over him, not fear, but a desperate plea that transcended language. Marcus set down his backpack and removed his jacket. "I'm going to help you," he said, hoping his tone conveyed what his words couldn't. "My name is Marcus." The being extended one of its free arms, revealing delicate digits that seemed designed for precision work. Clutched within was a small device with botanical samples, earth plants, Marcus realized. "You're a researcher," Marcus whispered, understanding dawning. "Like me." The alien skin pulsed with a soft blue light as it made a sound almost like a sigh. "Hold still," Marcus said, approaching carefully. "Let's get you free, researcher." The alien blinked its multifaceted eyes in what Marcus hoped was understanding. As the cold night settled around them, 2 scientists from different worlds prepared to bridge an interstellar gap through the universal language of compassion. Professor Ellis worked methodically to clear the debris pinning the alien's appendage. The strange metal-like material was surprisingly light despite its apparent density, but awkwardly shaped pieces made the task challenging. Every few minutes, he would pause to make eye contact with the being he had mentally begun calling researcher. "Almost there," Marcus murmured, though he knew his words held no meaning for the creature. It was his tone he hoped conveyed reassurance. The alien watched him with those multifaceted eyes that seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously. When Marcus finally lifted the last piece of wreckage, the being made a melodic trilling sound that vibrated through the clearing. "You're welcome," Marcus said, stepping back cautiously to give the alien space. The researcher carefully retracted its freed appendage, examining it with another pair of limbs. A translucent fluid seeped from what appeared to be a wound, glowing faintly in the darkness. Marcus gestured toward his first aid kit. "May I?" The alien tilted its head in a gesture so surprisingly human that Marcus felt a wave of emotion wash over him. Slowly, deliberately, the being extended its injured appendage toward him. With trembling hands, Marcus cleaned the wound as gently as possible. The alien skin felt like velvet over steel, soft to touch yet with an underlying firmness that suggested incredible strength. As he worked, Marcus noticed intricate patterns beneath the skin's surface, pulsing with light that seemed to follow neural pathways. "You're a long way from home," Marcus said conversationally, needing to fill the silence with something other than his own thundering heartbeat. "I'm guessing this wasn't a scheduled landing." The researcher reached for a small device attached to what Marcus could only describe as a utility belt. It projected a holographic display of symbols that reorganized themselves continuously. After several attempts, the symbols transformed into crude geometric shapes. Marcus's breath caught. "Mathematics," he whispered. "Universal language." He quickly emptied his backpack, finding a notebook and pen. With decisive strokes, he drew the Pythagorean theorem, then a simple representation of our solar system. The alien's colors shifted to a vibrant indigo as it recognized the drawings. It modified the solar system map, adding unfamiliar celestial bodies and drawing a trajectory line that ended at Earth. "You came from there?" Marcus pointed to a star system the alien had marked. The researcher pulsed a soft affirmative blue and added more details to the map, what appeared to be a larger ship in orbit around Mars. "A mothership," Marcus deduced. "You're not alone." The alien's colors darkened momentarily before it began a new series of drawings, plants, microbes, and soil samples. It pointed to the collection containers scattered around the crash site. "A scientific mission," Marcus nodded. "You're studying our ecosystem." Their rudimentary communication continued as night deepened around them. Marcus's academic mind raced with the implications of this encounter while his human heart remained fixed on one simple truth: this was a sentient being in need of help. The alien suddenly tensed, its colors shifting to alarming crimson. It made a sound like breaking glass and gestured toward the sky. Marcus listened and heard what had alerted his companion: the distant thrum of helicopter rotors. "Someone else detected your crash," he said urgently. "And I doubt they're coming with friendly intentions." The researcher gathered its sample case with quick, efficient movements. It projected another holographic image, this time of its ship, with damage indicators flashing over multiple systems. "You can't leave," Marcus realized. "And they're coming." The alien's eyes rotated to focus entirely on Marcus, conveying an unspoken question. Marcus didn't hesitate. "I'll help you. But we need to move, now." He helped the researcher to its feet, noting how it towered over him when fully upright. Its serpentine lower body moved with surprising grace despite the injury. "My car is 2 miles north," Marcus said, pointing. "Can you travel that far?" The alien made a gesture that somehow communicated determined resolve, then pointed to its crashed vessel. "We can't bring it," Marcus shook his head. "But I promise I'll help you contact your people." As helicopter searchlights began sweeping the distant tree line, scientist and researcher slipped into the forest's shadows. Two beings, separated by light years of evolution and culture, now united by circumstance and the universal instinct to protect knowledge from those who might misuse it. The forest floor whispered beneath their feet as Marcus guided the alien researcher through the densest parts of the woodland. The helicopter's searchlight cut through the canopy in sweeping arcs, forcing them to freeze periodically in the shadows of ancient oaks. The alien, whom Marcus had begun mentally calling Lyra after noting its fascination with his constellation maps, moved with surprising agility despite its injury, its serpentine lower body adapting effortlessly to the uneven terrain. "Stay low," Marcus whispered, ducking beneath a fallen tree trunk. The sound of voices carried through the crisp autumn air, methodical, professional voices using military terminology that confirmed his worst fears. Lyra's skin pulsed with a muted amber glow, a color Marcus had come to associate with anxiety or concern. The alien clutched its sample case protectively, those multifaceted eyes constantly scanning their surroundings with a precision that surpassed human capability. When they finally reached his jeep, Marcus hesitated. "They'll be monitoring the roads," he murmured, more to himself than to Lyra. The alien seemed to understand his concern, producing its holographic projector again. It displayed what appeared to be a topographical map of the area, far more detailed than any human technology could generate, with a route highlighted in pulsing light. "You can track their positions," Marcus realized, studying the moving dots that must represent the search teams. "And you're suggesting an alternative route?" Lyra's skin flashed a brief, affirmative blue. They followed the alien's guidance, taking overgrown logging roads and game trails that Marcus would never have found on his own. Twice they had to abandon the vehicle and proceed on foot when fallen trees blocked their path, and once they lay motionless in a shallow creek bed as a drone hummed overhead. Dawn was breaking by the time they reached Marcus's small lakeside cabin, a research retreat he used during sabbaticals. As they hurried inside, Lyra immediately moved to the windows, adjusting the blinds to minimize visibility from outside. "Smart," Marcus nodded, locking the door behind them. "This place isn't on any recent maps, it belonged to my grandfather. But we should assume they'll find it eventually." The cabin's main room was cluttered with the tools of Marcus's profession, star charts, telescopes, and computers running astronomical calculations. Lyra moved toward these with evident interest, those delicate fingers tracing the orbital paths Marcus had mapped. "Yes, that's my work," Marcus explained, knowing the words meant nothing but speaking anyway. "Studying the stars, like you." The alien produced a small device from its utility belt, damaged in the crash, with components exposed. It made a series of gestures that Marcus interpreted as a request for tools. "You need to repair your communicator," he guessed, gathering his electronics toolkit. "To contact your ship." As Lyra worked with impressive dexterity, Marcus monitored police scanners and news channels. Reports of a meteorological anomaly had begun appearing, along with announcements of military exercises in the area for public safety. The cover-up was already in motion. Hours passed as Lyra meticulously repaired its device, occasionally requesting materials that Marcus improvised from household electronics. The alien's focus was absolute, those multifaceted eyes narrowed in concentration as it manipulated components too small for human fingers to handle precisely. A sudden noise outside sent them both into stillness. Marcus crept to the window, peering through a gap in the blinds to see a park ranger's vehicle slowly cruising past the cabin. "Not military," he whispered, "but they're expanding the search perimeter." Lyra's colors shifted to that alarming crimson again as it held up the partially repaired communicator. A holographic display showed its mothership moving, repositioning itself behind Mars to maintain concealment. "They're hiding," Marcus understood. "Waiting for your signal." The alien's gestures became more urgent, pointing to the display, then to the sky, then drawing a rapid series of mathematical equations that Marcus struggled to follow. "Time," he finally decoded. "There's a time limit. Your window for communication is closing." As if confirming his interpretation, distant engine sounds approached from the main road, the heavy rumble of military transport vehicles. Marcus made a decision. "We need a better transmission point. Higher elevation, less interference." He pointed to a topographical map on his wall. Devil's Backbone. It's the highest point for miles, and it's covered in communication towers. If there's anywhere your signal can reach your people, it's there. Lyra studied the map, then its own star charts, then nodded, a surprisingly human gesture it must have learned from observing Marcus. As they gathered only the essentials, the communicator, Marcus's tools, water, and Lyra's precious sample case, Marcus couldn't help but wonder what would happen when the alien successfully contacted its ship. Was he aiding in first contact, or something more complex? The question lingered as they slipped out the back door, just as the first government vehicles appeared at the head of his long driveway. The race against both human pursuers and cosmic timetables had begun in earnest. Devil's Backbone stretched toward the sky like the spine of some ancient beast, its ridge dotted with radio towers and satellite dishes. The climb had been grueling, especially for Lyra, whose injury clearly caused discomfort despite the alien's stoic demeanor. Marcus had fashioned a makeshift bandage from his shirt, wrapping it around the damaged appendage which now glowed with a concerning blue-green light. Almost there, Marcus encouraged, offering his water bottle. After initial confusion, Lyra had learned to extract water through some form of absorption through its skin, a process that fascinated the professor in Marcus even amid their desperate circumstances. They reached the summit as dusk painted the horizon in hues that reminded Marcus of Lyra's shifting skin colors. The transmission towers hummed with energy that seemed to make the alien more alert, its multifaceted eyes reflecting the blinking red warning lights. "This should work," Marcus said, helping Lyra position the repaired communicator on the highest accessible platform. "No interference up here." Lyra's fingers moved with practiced precision over the device, adjusting settings and aligning components. A holographic display materialized, showing what Marcus recognized as their solar system, with a pulsing dot behind Mars, the mothership waiting in the shadow of the red planet. The alien hesitated, then turned to Marcus with an intensity that made him step back. It projected a new series of images: Earth, surrounded by smaller ships. Then humans, some in laboratory settings, others in what appeared to be containment units. "What is this?" Marcus whispered, though he already understood. "This isn't just a research mission, is it?" Lyra's colors shifted through complex patterns before settling on a deep, sorrowful purple. The alien projected more images, its own people, engaged in what appeared to be heated debate. Different factions, Marcus realized, with different intentions for Earth. "Your people are divided about us," Marcus said slowly. "Some want to study us. Others want more." The alien confirmed with a gentle pulse of light, then showed one final image, itself, standing with others of its kind who wore similar scientific markings, opposing a larger group with military insignia. "You're part of the scientific faction," Marcus nodded. "You don't agree with the others." Their moment of understanding was interrupted by the distant sound of helicopters. Marcus checked his binoculars, at least 3 aircraft approaching, along with vehicles on the access road below. "They're coming," he warned unnecessarily. "Whatever you're going to do it now." Lyra seemed torn, looking from the communicator to Marcus and back again. Then, with decisive movements, it modified the transmission, adding complex code sequences before activating the signal. A beam of concentrated light shot skyward, invisible except for a slight distortion of the stars above. Lyra's skin glowed with anticipation as they waited for a response. It came minutes later, a return signal that the alien received through its neural pathways, causing its entire body to illuminate. Lyra turned to Marcus, projecting a new series of images, the mothership approaching, but only a small vessel deploying to their location. The military faction, held at bay. "You convinced them," Marcus breathed. "They're sending just a recovery team for you." Searchlights appeared on the slopes below, voices calling out commands as the perimeter tightened around them. They had perhaps 15 minutes before capture became inevitable. Lyra suddenly extended all four of its arms toward Marcus, the universal gesture of offering. In its grasp was the sample case, the precious scientific data it had risked everything to collect. "You want me to have this?" Marcus asked, bewildered. The alien projected one final image, Marcus, presenting the case to human scientists, with Lyra's people arriving later in peaceful diplomatic exchange. A gesture of good faith, Marcus understood. Scientific exchange first, before official contact. The decision crystallized in Marcus's mind. He could surrender to the approaching authorities, become a classified statistic in some government facility, and watch as humanity's first contact was managed by military interests. Or he could trust this being from beyond the stars, a fellow scientist whose actions had consistently demonstrated ethical purpose. "I'll make sure this reaches the right people," Marcus promised, accepting the case. "People who will understand its significance." Lyra's colors shifted to a peaceful, grateful blue as a new sound joined the helicopters, the high-pitched hum of approaching alien technology. Marcus made his choice. He would not be present for the recovery. Instead, he would use the case as leverage to ensure humanity's first official extraterrestrial encounter happened on scientific, not military terms. "Go," he said, pointing to a hidden ravine that would shield Lyra from human detection. "I'll draw them away." As they parted ways under the watchful eyes of distant stars, scientist and researcher exchanged one final look of understanding, a bridge between worlds that transcended language, built on the universal foundation of knowledge and respect. The university auditorium hummed with anticipation. 6 months had passed since that fateful night on Devil's Backbone, yet Marcus Ellis could still feel the ghostly impression of Lyra's alien touch, that moment of connection before they had parted ways. He adjusted his tie, an uncharacteristic formality for the usually disheveled astronomy professor, and glanced at the sealed case beside the podium. The front row seats were occupied by an international coalition of scientists, geneticists, botanists, physicists, and astronomers, all bound by unprecedented non-disclosure agreements. Behind them sat government officials from 7 nations, their expressions ranging from skeptical to apprehensive. Professor Ellis, the UN Secretary-General, nodded, "We're ready to proceed." Marcus took a deep breath and approached the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to present will fundamentally change our understanding of life in the universe." He placed a hand on the sample case, Lyra's gift. This case contains botanical and atmospheric samples collected by an extraterrestrial researcher during a mission to Earth last October. Murmurs rippled through the audience. Most had been briefed, but hearing it stated so plainly still provoked reaction. "Following my encounter with this being, I made contact with Dr. Amara Okafor at the SETI Institute and Dr. Takashi Himura at Tokyo University." He nodded to his colleagues. "Together, we analyzed these samples and confirmed their non-terrestrial properties through independent verification." Marcus activated the display behind him, showing microscopic images of cellular structures unlike anything in Earth's evolutionary history. The biochemistry suggests adaptation to a nitrogen-rich atmosphere with minimal oxygen, consistent with the third planet in the Kepler 442 system. He advanced the slides to show stellar coordinates. More importantly, the samples contain a message encoded in their RNA sequencing, an invitation for scientific exchange. The Secretary-General leaned forward. "And you're certain this isn't a precursor to some form of hostile action?" Marcus met her gaze steadily. "Madam Secretary, if conquest were their intention, this conversation would not be taking place. They possess technology centuries beyond ours. The fact that they've chosen diplomatic scientific exchange speaks volumes about their intentions." Dr. Okafor stood, addressing the assembly. "Our analysis confirms Professor Ellis's assessment. These samples represent a gesture of scientific goodwill. The encoded message includes specifications for a communication array that would allow direct dialogue between our scientific communities. Which brings us to today's purpose, Marcus continued. In exactly 12 hours, a small research vessel will enter Earth's atmosphere and land at the designated coordinates in international waters. They expect an answer to their invitation. The tension in the room was palpable. 6 months of secret preparations, international negotiations, and scientific analysis had led to this pivotal moment, humanity's official first contact, conducted on terms of mutual scientific respect rather than fear or military posturing. The choice before us is simple, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. Do we extend our hand in peaceful scientific exchange or retreat into isolation? Do we embrace the opportunity to advance human knowledge by centuries, or surrender to fear of the unknown? As the debate unfolded around him, Marcus's mind drifted back to those moments with Lyra, the trust placed in him by a being from across the stars. He had spent 3 weeks in military custody after being captured on Devil's Backbone, refusing to divulge Lyra's existence until he could ensure the samples would be handled by scientists, not generals. His academic reputation had become both shield and leverage, forcing authorities to involve civilian researchers who eventually recognized the significance of what they were examining. Hours later, as the assembly reached its consensus, Marcus stood on the deck of a research vessel in the Pacific, watching the night sky with practiced eyes. Dr. Okafor joined him at the railing. "Are you nervous?" she asked. "Oddly, no," Marcus replied. "I've met them, Amara. When you look into those eyes, you see intelligence, curiosity, and something profoundly kindred." A point of light appeared in the sky, moving against the stellar backdrop in a way no natural object could. The ship's crew fell silent as the light grew brighter, descending in a controlled spiral. "They're early," someone whispered. "No," Marcus smiled, recognizing the particular pattern of lights that matched the craft he'd seen in the forest. "Right on time." As the alien vessel hovered above the ocean surface, bathing the assembled scientists in soft, pulsating light, Marcus felt a familiar presence in his mind, a gentle touch of recognition that transcended physical communication. "Welcome back, researcher," he thought, though he knew Lyra couldn't hear him. The craft settled on the water with barely a ripple, its hull opening to reveal 3 figures, one of whom moved with a familiar serpentine grace that made Marcus's heart leap with recognition. As humanity prepared for its first official extraterrestrial handshake, Marcus Ellis stood tall, no longer just a professor of astronomy but a bridge between worlds, proof that when faced with the unknown, understanding could triumph over fear, and knowledge over prejudice. The exchange had begun.